And it was a journey that started right here at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Hagerstown. Well, from here, we'll look a few blocks to our north and learn the unheralded story of the namesake of one of Hagerstown's city parks. His name? Jacob Wheaton. He was born to free African-American parents, Francis and Mary Wheaton, in 1835 near Middletown in Frederick County. He trained as a blacksmith and spent his youth in Middletown before moving to Hagerstown in the 1850s. Along the way, he married and started a large family. In the aftermath of the Battle of Antietam, health conditions in the Central County area were so bad that periodic epidemics of smallpox, cholera, and other illnesses erupted. In January, after the battle, smallpox came to Hagerstown and seemed to disproportionately target the African American community. Responding to the health crisis, the city leased the basement of the Ebenezer AME Church. It was used as a smallpox hospital for the African American community, and the city hired Wheaton to serve as the hospital's nurse. For several months, Wheaton provided compassionate and competent care to the hospital's patients. By mid-year, the epidemic ended, and the city council turned the church basement back to the congregation and released Wheaton from his job with their thanks. In the summer of 1863, Wheaton and many other local African American residents proudly registered for the military draft in Maryland. The Conscription Act did not exclude African Americans. Although Wheaton registered for the draft, he was not selected for service, nor did he volunteer to serve in the newly forming United States Colored Regiments. As the war wound down, many issues associated with the extinction of slavery needed immediate attention and resolution. Efforts to both promote and suppress the civil rights of slaves and freemen played out in the aftermath of the war. This conflict resulted in the adoption of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution. All three, the first constitutional amendments ratified in over 60 years, were intended to protect the rights of citizenship of African Americans who then began organizing within our nation's two-party system. Wheaton became active in the Republican Party, and on April 13, 1868, he stepped forward to cast his ballot in the election for mayor and city council.
When Wheaton presented himself at the ballot box to vote, the judge of the elections telegraphed to Annapolis for instructions. He received a reply that Wheaton was entitled to vote, and his ballot was received. When the other Negroes asserted that they had cast the first vote, he had the matter investigated, and it was settled beyond dispute that he was the first. The Tyrone Daily Herald, Tyrone, Pennsylvania, May 27, 1897.
Thus, Hagerstown appears to have been home to the first African American voter in Maryland history. Yet, even with this accomplishment, Jacob was not finished. In 1870, he was appointed with three other local African Americans to the Republican State Central Committee, and he served on the Washington County Republican Committee in the 1880s. In November 1918, Washington County Circuit Court Judge Thomas Poffenberger appointed Jacob as a court bailiff, a position he held for several years. 2 years later, he was a member of a committee who petitioned the Washington County Board of Education to create a high school for African Americans. After a long and successful life overcoming the obstacles put before him by society, Jacob Wheaton died at his home on West Bethel Street on November 8, 1924, at almost 90 years of age. He rests in Rose Hill Cemetery. Jacob's legacy went unabated as his son established his own niche in African American history. His son, John Francis Wheaton, graduated from Storer College in Harpers Ferry in 1882. He joined his father in local Republican politics and gave speeches in the African American community for Republican presidential candidate Benjamin Harrison. For his work, he was made an alternate delegate to the 1888 Republican National Convention in Chicago. After he returned from the Windy City, he attended Howard University. He obtained a clerkship in the U.S. House of Representatives through contacts with Hagerstown Congressman Louis McComas, and served until 1892. Soon, John Francis moved to Minneapolis, where he attended law school. Within a few years, he was the first African American elected
to the Minnesota legislature. This was an especially important accomplishment since he represented a district that had few African American residents. During the Spanish-American War, John Francis Wheaton lobbied for the commissioning of black officers for service in the Minnesota National Guard. Later, he moved to New York, where he entered a very successful law practice and even served as an assistant district attorney for a time. When John Francis died in 1922, it is reported that his funeral was attended by 20,000 people.
10 short years after Jacob's passing, Mayor Irvin Wirtz dedicated Jacob Wheaton Park. I'm standing on the grounds of that park today. This area historically used by the local African American community for recreation and entertainment. It was organized into a formal city park in 1935, using this band shell that you see over my shoulder and funds from the Depression-era Works Progress Administration. The Jonathan Street community gained the site of a bona fide city park. And no finer example of sacrifice, perseverance, and citizenship could be honored than by naming this park in honor of Jacob Wheaton.